I was sitting in my lounge when I heard a knock on my front door. I opened it up and I saw this very distressed looking young lady in a school uniform and a motorcycle helmet in her hand standing there. And before I could even greet, she said, "Oom, you better come quickly. Your son has been in an accident." So I got in my car and I drove off to my son's school, and as I turned the corner I saw this large crowd of people standing there in the middle of the road. The doctor was there, the schoolmaster, and most of the teachers, and seemingly all of the students as well. And I knew that in the middle of that crowd, my 17-year-old son was lying. He was on his way home from school on his motorbike when he was knocked off his motorbike by an elderly man. He was eventually taken to the hospital where we found out that the accident caused his neck vertebrae to break and all the ligaments on his left leg were severely torn. So he was supposed to have an operation, but the doctors feared for damaging the spinal cord, so they decided not to do that. So he had to lie down on his back for a couple of weeks for that vertebrae to heal. He would have been out of school for the best part of a quarter of the school year. So I took him home. He was absolutely bedbound, and the pain in his leg was so severe that I had to administer painkillers, very strong painkillers during the course of the day. And at night he would ring a bell or he would phone me when the pain becomes unbearable. And for 3 days I was struggling with this bitterness and anger in my heart towards this man who knocked him off his bike. Until I realized that there was no intent for this man to hurt my son. It was an accident, that's why they call it the accident. So these feelings just slipped out of my system. And I was overwhelmed by peace and contentment. And I just knew at that moment that the situation is not going to be as it is at the moment. I just knew that my son don't have to lie on his back for so many weeks. And that there indeed is a solution to this problem. So I went to him, sat next to him, and I said, "Gio," that's his name. I said, "Gio, there's a verse in Matthew 6 which says, the lamp of the body is the eye. If the eye is good, the whole body will be illuminated, will be full of light." And at that time I was in the ministry and I was pastoring a church in South Africa. And I felt it appropriate to use this Bible verse. So I said, let's apply this principle. Let's see your healing. He agreed. I put my hand on his knee. We closed our eyes and we just sat there seeing his healing. We didn't pray. We didn't utter any words. We just saw his healing. And after a few moments, I put my hand underneath his back and we repeated the process. And after a minute or three, I opened my eyes and this phrase, 14 days, just dropped into my heart. And I knew that 14 days from the day of the accident, my son will be able to walk again. I just knew it. And I told him, "Gio, just lie on the bed for the next 11 days. That would complete the cycle of 14 days. But I didn't tell him anything about the 14 days thing that I heard. The next day, the swelling on his knee were completely subsided. There was no pain at all, nothing of any sort. So on the morning of the 14th day, I was up very early in the morning. Because today is the day that he was supposed to get up. And I was pacing the house and I didn't want to go into his room because today I have to tell him, "You must get up." And what if I've missed this thing that I heard about 14 days? And as I was thinking about this, there was a knock on my front door. And I opened it. And there it was the doctor that attended to him at the scene of the accident. I didn't even realize that doctors were still doing house calls anymore. 8 o'clock in the morning. And he wanted to see Hugh, and I was so relieved because now I don't have to make the call on Hugh's medical condition. The doctor can do that. And he sat next to Hugh, and he took his leg and he shifted to the left and right and up and down. And he slid his hand underneath put his hand underneath his back, and he pushed him up and back. And then he said, Hugh, you can go to school on Monday. 14 days after the day of the accident, my son was able to walk again. You can just imagine what happened to him on the Monday morning when he walked into that school. It was as if Lazarus was risen from the grave. The students couldn't believe it because most of them knew what happened to them because they were at the scene of the accident. And it even prompted one of the students to ask, what do these people believe in? But although it seemed as if it was a miracle, there's a very logical explanation to this. I realized that my eye influences my biology. That my perspective on life influences every sphere of my life. My physical sphere, my emotional sphere, every sphere of my life. The way I look at life. If I can see differently, I can see a different reality. And I came to understand that when I want to release my potential within me, I need to look at life without preconceived judgments. That I must understand that my circumstances are at best neutral. It's not good or bad, or right or wrong. But that the way I react to my circumstances will determine whether the circumstances will be my servant or my master. And if I look at my circumstances in a very narrow-minded way, I will always be intimidated by my circumstances, and I will always experience that it's indeed my master. I came to understand that I need to release all the restrictions that I have when I look at life. That I must be so open-minded so that life can deliver to me all the miracle that He wants to deliver to me. There's this beautiful story, the story of the Good Samaritan, where this man came to Jesus and wanted to ask Him, he asked Him, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life? But in the Greek text, it literally says, how do I do the deeper life? How do I live a deeper life here and now? That's the question that he asked Jesus. So it wasn't about how do I get to heaven one day, or how do I get to life after death one day, but how do I do the deeper life here and now? And then he eventually Jesus told this man about this man going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. When he was attacked by thieves, he was stripped of his clothes, he was left to die along the road. And then along came a priest. He saw this man lying there, but he went the other way. And then along came a Levite. He saw the man, did the same, went the other way. And then eventually came along the Samaritan. He saw this man, felt compassion for him, bandaged his wounds, took care of him, took him to the nearest inn with the instruction to the innkeeper to take care of this man on his account. The priest and the Levite were representing the church of the day, or the religious society of the day, where they looked at life and evaluated life through their paradigm of right and wrong, through their religious thinking. And we must remember that the church of that day had this laws of purification, which prohibited any church official to get in contact with anyone who might render them impure. or to touch anyone who might taint them. Immoral people like drunkards and prostitutes and thieves and all those people. So when the priest and the Levite came upon this man lying along the road, they had to make a judgment call whether this person has the potential to render them impure, to taint them. So both of them decided to rather honor their religious laws. Because this man, he could have been a drunkard lying along the road. So both of them decided rather to honor their religious laws. And they didn't want to put themselves in a position where they might break these religious laws. So they were good people. They weren't bad people. They were pious people. People who really wanted to honor God. And they were taught that we honor God by adhering to the religious laws that the church taught us about. So they were good people, not bad people. The Samaritan, on the other hand, had no such religious laws that they had to adhere to. So it was the normal thing and easy for him to take care of this man along the road. So the story wants to show that the church of the day and the people of the day were so intrigued by their religious paradigms and by their cultural paradigms that they weren't able to meet the need of the people of the day. And very often that's true of our lives. That our codes of conduct in our lives are such that we're not able to take care of the need, to really take care of the need of the people. I'm not talking about the physical needs only, but also the emotional needs of the people. It's important to have codes of conduct in our lives. We need that. But it must be at best be our servant and not our master. It must not keep us away from helping other people to meet the need of other people. And very often we're tempted to judge other people who doesn't look like we look. People with different sexual orientation or political orientation or belief systems or ethical background. To judge them according to our code of conduct. And very often be judgmental in such a way that we're not able to really meet the emotional needs of the people who find themselves lying along the road, being shamed by life. We need the codes of conduct as long as it is our servant. It's like an aeroplane accelerating on a runway in order to take off. And after it accumulated enough speed, it leaves the confinement of the runway indicators and it lifts off. The runway indicators are the servant. But if that plane would have stayed on the runway, accelerating and stayed on the runway, it would have crashed and killed the passengers. The same is true of our lives. There comes a time that it's necessary for us to fly higher than our religious codes of conduct, than our cultural codes of conduct, in order for us to really meet the need of the people who find themselves along the way of life, being shamed by life. And we need to understand that the deeper way, how do I do this deeper life thing? How do I live the deeper life? By understanding that our codes of conduct are at best supposed to be our servant and not our master. And with an open-mindedness, with such a way that we evaluate life, an open-minded eye will always eventually be able to plug into this vast source of higher morality, of higher wisdom, and will eventually enable us not only to meet our full potential and to release our full potential, but also enable us to meet the need of the people who find themselves along life's way, being shaped by life. And it will enable us eventually to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. I thank you.